All right. Looks like we still got a couple more people logging in, but we'll go ahead and kick things off and get the ball rolling. So we appreciate everyone coming today. I see a lot of familiar faces out there who not only participate in a lot of IAAO events and functions, but people who came to our first installment of the Leadership Symposium last month. So we're really excited to have you back with us. As you know, this year we had to go to that virtual format, so we will be hosting one of these each month, each time focusing on a different department, so we can really dive into those details and give you guys time to ask those questions and really build out what really makes up IAAO and how that can help you guys and where you fit into this equation. We couldn't do this without you guys. Your participation coming to these meetings is the reason we do it. And so we're really excited to have you back for the second installment. So for those who this may be their first meeting, the Leadership Symposium is an interactive, highly engaging virtual meeting that will allow you to develop a thorough understanding of services and resources IAAO has available to you and your organization. Our purpose is to share information to chapter and affiliate leaders to converge and learn about IAAO offerings. Formal introductions of staff and departmental overviews will be shared throughout a series of webinars. Again, as I mentioned, this is part 2 of that, as we'll continue those throughout the year. But we're very excited for this one, as it is a very timely, well-placed webinar, and with all the big event that we have that you guys all love so much coming up. So we'll dive into some of those details here shortly. But first, we'd like to thank GSA for sponsoring the entire series of the Leadership Symposium. GSA offers a full suite of software for local government, including CAMA collections and municipality solutions. Visit their website for more information, and that is www.cama.io. So to dive into some of the details of what the overall purpose of the meetings department is, I would like to introduce Joe Heater, our director of meetings, to take you guys through that. Take it away, Joe.
All right. Thank you, Daniel. My name is Joe Heater. I'm the director of meetings for IAAO. I just finished my second year with the organization, but I go back 25 plus years in planning meetings and conferences and events for a variety of different organizations. I oversee the department from a big picture perspective. If you've been to some of our meetings and conferences, you've seen what they look like when you're out in the audience, but the team that you'll meet today are the folks that make it all happen really behind the scenes. There's a million details to look into, and we'll just touch on those with a brief overview today, and also maybe give you some insight into how we might be able to assist you if you have a chapter meeting that involves renting out a venue or ordering food and beverage or those types of things. So our department manages 12 to 15 meetings and conferences a year. Our board meetings might be 15 to 18 people. And if you're familiar with our annual conference, that's our largest event of the year, where I know that we've had on the 1,500 people. I believe last year for Niagara Falls, we were at about 1,400. And the things that we do with those conferences is every detail really has to be looked at, from audiovisual setup in the education department or in the education rooms. If you've attended and you've seen an awards lunch, we do a lot of big audiovisual for that. Everything down to what you're having for lunch has to be looked at, and we have a budget to follow. So all of those things are evaluated and looked at and set up with the venues and facilities that we're using. It can include hotel reservations, meeting space, being reserved, you name it. There's about 100 different things that we look at and arrange in each one of our conferences and meetings. During the course of a year, there's probably at least 3,000 attendees that we assist and through all of our meetings and events. And really each one of them has a little bit different personality. If you've been to maybe GIS CAMA, that's our second largest event, which is typically around 400 to 500 people, and a little bit smaller version of the conference. But we do legal meetings twice a year. We do 4 board meetings a year. We do leadership meetings a couple times a year. Really, it's there's always something going on. We're always planning for the future as far out as 4 years in advance. So it's a busy place, and especially this year, we're doing something entirely new for conference. So there's a lot going on, and I'm looking forward to having each one of the team members touch on a little bit about what they do. I introduced myself here in a second. We'll have Rachel Mency come on and talk about a little bit about what she does. Leanne Ritter and Daniel, who you've already met. We are the folks that make up the behind the scenes meeting and conference team. And it's a great team. I'm really happy to be associated with these good folks. Everybody works hard and has a lot of great experience. And as we'll touch on a little bit later, the folks that you see on the screen there, including myself, could be a resource for you and kind of a consultant if you're ever doing anything that requires a venue or a restaurant or audiovisual. We have a ton of experience, and we'd be happy to help you. I won't go too much further into my role, but one of the things that we'll touch on a little bit, and I think it's one of the areas that you have to be aware of and a little bit cautious of if your chapter ends up doing some type of event, even if it's at a restaurant or if you were doing a social event at a bar, let's say, or anything that involves renting space or purchasing food and beverage. More than likely, you're going to end up needing to sign some kind of an agreement, and those agreements can be a little tricky. But that's one of the things that I focus on, whether it's conference or smaller meetings. We end up doing contracts sometimes for our conference. If we're using a convention center, those contracts can be 60 pages long with a lot of language and a lot of commitments and actually a lot of risks. So that's one of the areas that I really focus on, or that we focus on, and one of the areas that we might be able to give you a little guidance if your chapter gets into one of those situations. All right, Rachel, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I see some familiar faces and names. For those of you who don't know, my name is Rachel Mency, and I am the meetings coordinator for IAAO. Today, I want to talk a little bit about what I do and some best practices IAAO uses in the meetings department that will hopefully be helpful takeaways for you and your chapters. While I assist Joe in planning and coordinating all IAAO meetings, my role does have a large focus on smaller meetings and conference exhibitors. When planning smaller meetings anywhere from 10 to 200 people, like our legal seminar, leadership days, committee meetings, the marketing team will do their job to get attendees excited about the content, but it's the meeting's job to get everyone excited about the destination. Look for surrounding highlights, things to do in the area, include those in event communications. That gets people really excited about going to these smaller meetings. It's also important for attendees to see a membership benefit. So IAAO usually sets member and non-member registration fees for every event. Setting an early bird deadline can also help planning, giving people to register a little bit earlier and give you a better idea of how many attendees to plan for ahead of time. All right, let's talk about exhibitors. IAAO usually works with about 40 to 60 exhibitors at our annual conference, and a few helpful methods produce a more efficient exhibitor experience. One is our Exhibit Advisory Council. Fairly new, this council has already provided helpful input for IAAO and for exhibitors. The group consists of a diverse mixture of exhibitors, large to small, and serves as a voice for the entire group. Members of the group every year change, and we meet with the group about 4 times a year to discuss the exhibitor experience and gives them an opportunity to voice any concerns or talk about what benefited them most at conference. So it's really beneficial group to get in discussion. We get a really helpful perspective talking with that advisory council. Another helpful tool is our priority point system, and some of you may have seen this. It is usually posted on our exhibitors page on our conference website. with the online transition this year to a virtual conference, it is kind of being worked through this year. So I will have that up soon if you guys want to take a look at it for helpful hints. But it's a method used to track exhibitor investment in order to determine their booth selection placement. If any of you have ever manned a booth at a conference, you know location on the exhibit hall floor can be pretty important. This process helps us determine and order how they get to choose their booth. Basically, the larger the investment, the sooner you get to choose your booth. So it is helpful in setting up that process. Lastly, exhibitor communication can keep exhibitors informed and provide a sense of importance to IAAO even during the off season. We keep in touch with our exhibitors pretty year round, keeping in touch regarding conference updates and deadlines they need to know can be crucial in regards to maintaining a good relationship with our exhibitors. But in a gist, that is what I focus on. I do a lot with registration for almost every event, so I deal with a lot of those questions in any event. So if you ever have any questions regarding registration or our small meetings or conference exhibitors, I am always available. I will hand it back to Daniel.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. We'll move on now to Leanne Ritter, our Special Projects Manager. Take it away, Leanne.
Thank you, Daniel. Hello and happy afternoon, everyone. Good Tuesday afternoon. I think on your screen you're seeing a list of the areas I primarily cover. As Special Projects Manager, sometimes you might describe that as other duties as assigned. Everyone has that as part of their job description, and in a way that's sort of my whole job description. But the areas that you see on the screen are those areas that I primarily cover. The conference education sessions I'd like to talk a little bit more about, as well as sponsorships. I recently have started working with the Legal and Prep and Trial Seminar. Many of you may have attended that event. Do a quick commercial. The Legal Seminar is set for December 3rd and 4th in Austin, Texas this year. I also work on the election, and I would suggest you think about, look at the candidates. They will be coming out very shortly. And I do work on that election process. One area that might be helpful in that is that we do work with an outside vendor. And if you're ever looking to set up or determine a vendor who will assist you in the election, I could certainly talk with you about how we did that. I work on IAAO surveys. They might be for example, we have a new member survey that comes out shortly after someone joins IAAO. That's an ongoing thing that happens, but that also might be a post-conference survey. If you've attended conference, I'm sure you've received that, and hopefully you've responded. But if you ever would like input on developing of surveys, I'm available for that as well. And then finally, I do work on our annual report or the year in review. And that year in review sort of, I would say, highlights the things that IAAO has accomplished during the year, and is kind of a good picture, not only for our membership to see, but also, is a great record of what we've done. So I'm also happy to talk about annual reports. But jumping back to the two areas most related to our call today, the conference education sessions. Many of you do put on events and conferences. Joe talked about much of the planning and the behind the scenes. Rachel talked about getting those events and those details set up. The area that I work on is the actual education sessions. One thing I've heard many times is that people come to events for the education sessions, but they stay for the people. So we do try to make the people part and that networking, not only when we're in person, but also at this virtual conference, a huge piece of what we do. But looking at how one would set up a education program for an event, I have about 4 or 5 bullets I just wanted to mention briefly. The first is you would want to select your team. Who are those people who would be making that determination? It could be members of your chapter, probably, but could involve some outside folks as well. The next piece is determining what types of sessions. Are there certain topics that are hot topics, certain topics that are ongoing that you want to address? But what exactly would you like to see at the conference? The next piece is actually developing the call for presentations. The call for presentations can be very formal, as IAAO does, which you will see in December and January of every year. We put out a formal call with a due date and specific information we want to gather. That can be done. It can also be done just, I don't want to say just, that's by no means, in reaching out to specific individuals for specific topics. And that's often what IAAO will do after the call for presentations. If we haven't received those presentations that on certain topics we wanted to have presented, we then will reach out, use our resources to reach out to people who might be able to speak on a topic. The next piece, of course, is selecting those sessions that you do want to offer and then helping to put them into a schedule. Scheduling can be an interesting challenge too. Depending on what other individuals have going on, or if you have one person who might speak a couple times, but scheduling can be an interesting challenge. And of course, no one ever wants to speak the last session of the last day, so that's a balance as well. Next step would be confirming your speakers, getting all the materials back from them that you might need, where it's a biography, a presenter letter of agreement, their actual presentation in terms of a PowerPoint. And then I would say determining your on-site procedures. How do you want people to check in? How do you want them, how do you want to make sure they're in the room? And that might not be as much of an issue if you have one session going on at a time, but if you have 4 or 5 up against each other, you do want to make sure you're managing that and that the individuals are actually in the room and ready to present. The other topic I thought might be of interest is how IAAO does our sponsorships. And first off, we look at developing a list of opportunities. What might someone want to sponsor? I would start and back up maybe just a bit and say IAAO does try to look at sponsorships as a partnership. Most companies that we would work with don't provide money just to be providing money. It is a give and take. The sponsors, and we don't use the word vendors very often. We use the word partners. Our partners, also are looking for something, and talking to each of them about what it is they're looking for is very helpful in then trying to match up what you all have available in terms of opportunities and what they are looking for. I would say it's also important to confirm in writing the agreement. Agree for what you understood and what they understood. And then executing that agreement. If you want a partner to come back another year, make sure that you have executed or activated all of those things that you've agreed to. And then finally, the reporting. After your event is over, make sure that you do report the information that perhaps number of attendees, but some specifics about your event, maybe the number of people who visited their booth or asked for something in particular. But do not only give a report, but thank thank your sponsors. They're an important part of your event. So Daniel, that's what I have.
Awesome. Thank you, Leanne. Moving right along, Leanne mentioned, nobody wants to go last at conference, but somebody always has to be the last presentation. So in this case, it's me, but I am proud to wrap up this good group before we dive into some details about some fun things. But as you may have heard me earlier, my name is Daniel Fox. I'm the Membership Brand Marketing Coordinator. Leanne also made a great point about how we all wear a lot of hats at IAAO, and meetings department is one of those hats. And since I joined the meetings department as some support, it's been a whirlwind of me catching up, learning a lot of great things. But it's been a lot of fun because running around at these other events, seeing different angles and different sides of it, it's nice to see the other side and kind of piece it all together. So a few of the things, overviews that I do with this department is the meetings and conference support. The main goal of mine when I first joined this department was to, be another set of eyes and ears and feet on the ground. As Joe mentioned, these events, even the small ones, can be many, many details and many, many pages of contracts and just little things that you need to kind of keep an eye on. So I'm there to help support the group as another set of eyes and ears to look over those on site, helping out with support and things like that. Another thing is webinars and know before you go. An event such as this essentially falls into that category. As you know, with conference last year, we had a webinar prior to it, which we called the Know Before You Go. We want to give an insight. Nothing is a secret. We want you guys to hit the ground running when you come to those events and not be overwhelmed. We want to offer you guys as many things as we can, but we also know if it's a first conference, even if it's your 10th conference, showing up and trying to catch up to speed those first 3 days can be a little overwhelming and in a good way. But we want to offer as many details as we can to you prior to those events so you can make the most of your time. So things like webinars and meetings like this to give you guys a little bit of insight into those events. We really look to deliver those to give more value to you before, during, and after the events occur. The next thing on my list is content creation for meeting communication. You'll see a few of these examples, most noticeably videos we shoot of our presidents delivering the message. Earlier this year, obviously, we had to make the choice to go virtual for the conference. And while we couldn't be more excited, we know it's a big change. And we brought our current president, Amy, in to do a video. We know you guys get slammed with lots of emails from the taxpayers as well as us. And so we want to give you guys a efficient message and the communication to that. So things we're looking to do through that content creation is offer more effective and efficient ways to give you guys that information. Sometimes it can be easier to read or watch a video than to read through an email. So we understand that. We're trying to mix that up so it's not just overwhelming you guys with a lot of words on the screen. The last thing I focus on with this group is tech support for the virtual and in-person meetings. As you may recognize me from some of the webinars we host as not only moderator, but kind of helping solve any tech issues on the background, making sure you guys are connected. That being said, if anyone's having any issues with this meeting, you know where to find me. Use that chat box and I'll be happy to help. But things like that. And then in the in-person conferences, you'll see me running around, checking in on the sessions, probably bugging you guys just to make sure you're okay. And you're like, get out of here. I got it. I'm a pro at this. And that's good. We're happy to see that. But we just want to let you know that we are there to help with those supports. But as you look at this list and hear me talk a little bit about that, you're asking yourself, like, what can you take from this to help your own local meetings? One thing we've found, I'm going to dive back to the content creation. We know, again, like there's a lot of emails. So if you want to stand out and make sure people are getting your messages, sending out invites, meeting invites to make sure you can get as many people to come to your local events as you can, think outside the box. Shoot a quick video. It doesn't need to be anything crazy. We're all working from home at this point, and Zoom is a new life and for all of us, and we're all familiar with it. And nothing is perfect And it's just about getting the message out. Shoot something on your phone, shoot something. If you have a little bit of a home studio or an office studio, don't be afraid to think outside the box to create that message. You can still send it in an email, but people be like, oh, that's great. I want to click on that video and watch that. And they're like, I'm very excited about this event. So think outside the box when you're building that event in terms of, sending out the initial awareness and getting people to commit. And then again, like, just to kind of spin the tech support thing for virtual and in-person meetings. We know in-person meetings are a little bit difficult nowadays, and we're having to be creative in the way that we get communications out there and host these. At this point, again, I feel like we're all, experts on Zoom and at least familiar enough with it to start and host some meetings. So don't be afraid to use those as your tool to get your meeting. I know it's a tough year and things are a little bit different, but we want to make sure you guys can still have your annual meeting. So don't be afraid to make that switch. And if you have your fall seminar coming up or your fourth quarter seminar, host it on Zoom. It's not too crazy anymore. It's not. It's a good tool, and we want to make sure you guys have that. And if you're setting these up and want help with best practices, things like recording the meeting for those who can't come, reach out to us. We have been doing variations of this, whether it's Zoom or WebEx, or GoToMeeting. They all operate very similarly, and we've used them all as tools at headquarters. So don't be afraid to reach out and be like, hey, we have this seminar that's supposed to take place in October. We're not really sure where to start. How can we build this? They're very compatible with things like PowerPoint and those tools. So we can definitely help you guys, walk you through that. We hope as you watch this, maybe you're picking up on some things that you like that we're doing, jot them down. We're happy to share any tips or tricks as we go along. So it was new to us to switch this fast, just as it was for you, but just know you're not in it alone. And we're very, very happy to lend a hand or any advice and learn from our own mistakes. But that is pretty much a general overview of what I do. I know we definitely have a few more slides, but at this point, if you guys have questions you want to send in, don't forget to use the chat box. Send those in, and when we get to the end, we'll go through those and answer those questions. And we'll move on to our next slide. And for this, I will turn it back over to Joe to open up the floor for a little bit of engagement.
Okay, we're going to give this a shot. If you go to the bottom of your screen, there should be a little button that says participants. And I just want to make sure that you click on that, and that should pull up a list of the participants that are on this call. And at the bottom of that little window, there should be a raise hand. So we're just going to go through a few little, it says fun with contract language. Contract language is not fun, really, but I just want to see, because I know some of you plan meetings and events or have had some experience with them. I just would love to see who knows a few of these little tricky phrases that come up in our world. So we'll see how this goes. Number one is force majeure clause. So I want to see raise of hand if you know what the force majeure clause is, or if you'd like to take a shot at what that is. No takers? Oh, we got Jill.
We do have one.
Let's go. Jill, let's bring up
Okay.
Jill W.
So I'm just gonna throw it out there. Does that mean like a major storm or an event by nature that would prohibit the event from happening?
That's pretty good. Does anybody else want to try? Mary Huda.
Okay, I think it's something that's beyond your control. So kind of piggybacking on what Jill said, a natural event or something that no one could foresee. I know, unfortunately, our NRAA group from New Jersey had to use this contract clause to cancel their hotel and all of the group reservations that were made for the spring conference this year.
All right, good. If you want to bring up that answer, Daniel, I'll just do a quick. So it is both of what they just mentioned, but it's kind of an interesting dynamic. If you do sign a contract for a venue or a hotel or a convention center, all those things, you will see this clause in the contract. And it's kind of important to know what it's all about, because this year it has become probably the #1 topic in the meeting planning world, because most people ignore it and say that'll never be something that we need. But the fact is this year was a perfect example. It is a situation that's beyond the control of the person that signs the contract in having a meeting. And as you guys all know, we have that situation this year. But what you might find surprising is that not all of our venues and hotels have been really, really cooperative and said, oh yeah, it's fine, you're out of your contract. So it is an important clause. We are now still asking for future contracts to include specific language for either COVID or, infectious diseases and those types of things. But it's just one of those areas that if you are looking at a contract, to be aware of and really understanding how you might be able to cancel the contract if you need to. All right, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so this is I'm going to call it, this is plus menu pricing. So if you've ever planned an event and you had to select menus, this is a really, I'm giving you some clues. It can be a little bit of a dangerous or tricky situation to get in. Does anyone want to take a stab at what plus menu pricing is? No takers? I should have included some kind of a prize. All right, Lane, let's hear what you think about plus pricing.
I don't know, I'm guessing, but is it kind of like a la carte? So like for everything they keep adding on plus more money. I don't know.
Actually, that's pretty good. And Lane's area is going to be, Boston area is going to be hosting 2022 annual conference. So we'll be we'll be talking about this, but let's bring up the what plus menu pricing is.
Let's hope we're in person in Boston.
Right. But when you start working with a hotel or a venue, they'll give you a menu and they'll say, in this example, a lunch price is $30 or $20 or $50. And you think, oh, well, that looks pretty good. Well, in nearly every case, there's some fine lines at the bottom that say something like, it doesn't include your taxes and service charges or gratuities and different things like that you'll see in there. And the scary thing is that it can be as much as 40% more than what your net price is, depending on the city. And obviously you guys know as well as anybody that those tax rates can vary from city to city. Some have like $3 per room night additional hotel cost. And so there's some hidden costs in there. And I'm gonna call on Lane for this one because it's going to be something that you'll need to think about in the not too distant future. But I'm going to ask you, Lane, what would you guess? Now, this is for 2021, Hyatt Regency Chicago. What would you guess is the inclusive cost of a gallon of coffee? So including the taxes and service charges, what would your guess be?
Okay, I'm going to go what I think is a little crazy, but because it's Chicago, I'm going to say $100.
All right. Does anybody else want to make a guess? Just before we reveal that one, raise your hand if you do. Doris, what would your guess be?
I'm going to guess 120 per gallon plus.
Okay. And how about Curtis? Can we hear from him?
I would say 200 just because I've had bad experiences with hotels and overcharging. So.
Wow.
Okay. And I think I saw, was it Mary that had her hand up there for a second?
I did. I thought you had enough responses. I'm going to go on the low end. It's only a gallon. Those all seem high and they could be reasonable. I'm going to go 75.
Oh, no, no.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and reveal that one, Daniel. The cost of a gallon of coffee next year, and Curtis was headed down the right track,
Wow.
including taxes and service charges at the Hyatt Regency, is almost $211 per gallon. So part of the reason I bring that up is if you do end up being involved in the planning of a conference or a meeting, even a chapter meeting, you might see at least $100 depending on your location, $100 plus. And this one I used to use as an example because when I present to the board each year what our costs might be for conference, I used to make a joke that coffee could be $200 a gallon just for effect. But we now are in the world where it really can be $200 a gallon, and it does put the onus back on you to be budget conscious in how you order the coffee, or if you order that coffee. There's a lot of maneuvering, let's just say, when it comes to food and beverage costs. So, all right, I think we have one more. All right. Hotel, I don't know, Lane, did you have a question on the last one or?
Yeah, on the last one, I was just going to say, we have a lot of Dunkin' Donuts up here in Boston. Can we bring in our own, or did they write that in that you can't?
You cannot, and that is one of the tricky parts about working with these hotels and convention centers is they're very strict on that, and so they have you, so to speak, and but there is some things that we do just to be as efficient as we can, and we want people to enjoy the experience and get coffee in the morning and all those things, but it has to be thought out. It's not as simple as just saying we have 1,000 people and we need a bunch of coffee. We really put some time and energy into trying to mitigate those costs as much as we can. But that's a good question. They do not allow you to bring in the outside. All right, hotel, this is the last one, hotel concessions. All right, I'm just going to take this one. So before you give the answer, I'll tell you what it is not. It is not a concession stand or a snack bar at the hotel, even though that's what it sounds like. All right, Daniel, if you want to show us that one, okay. So hotel concessions are when you're in a contract with a hotel. One of the positives that you can do if you have some guest rooms and different things that you're spending money at a hotel or a venue is to ask for some perks. And you know, it's one of those situations when you're dealing with these venues and hotels, all they can really say is no. And so we always ask, and if they want the business bad enough, you'd be surprised. Sometimes they're pretty generous. It could be complimentary guest rooms, so you can help cover the cost of your staff that might need to go and stay at a hotel. Upgrades if you have a VIP speaker or somebody like that that's staying in a hotel. Even if you're planning a smaller meeting that doesn't involve guest rooms, a lot of times just for the asking, they may give you a discounted menu or a welcome gift for someone or AV discounts. So that's one of the things that we always do and would encourage you to do is if you are planning a meeting or a conference, you know, ask for some extras. Ask them to kick in something that'll help you with your budget or help you with attracting speakers or guests and covering your costs. So those were just a few of the things. Like I said, some of these contracts can be 50 pages long, so there's a lot of them. And there's a lot of language in there. And we would be happy to help if you are engaging in a contract for a meeting or conference of your own and giving you maybe some guidance when you look at those. All right. So just we have a couple of questions. just let us know if we can help you. We have a ton of experience. And if you're planning a meeting for the first time, it can be a little overwhelming, even if it's 10 or 15 or 20 people. We can give you a little guidance and assistance. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call one of the folks that you've seen from our team, or email us. We're easy to find on the website, IAAO's website. And just let us know. We'll try to help out any way we can, or just give you a little guidance. It can be a little scary, and it can be a little risky. So we would hate to see you guys get into some contracts and then not be able to get out of them if a situation came up. So we'd be happy to help you out in any way we can. All right.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you for that, Joe. And again, just wanted to take a quick moment to thank our sponsor. We know, again, we usually have this event in person, but due to everything going on this year, we couldn't make that happen, but we wanted to share that with you guys either way. It's actually kind of turned out in a great way, and GSA is making that possible. So again, go check out their stuff. They're doing great work, and we really couldn't do any of this without those sponsorships and partnerships. We did have a couple questions, and so I'll move on to this slide. If you guys think of anything afterwards, Jill will be happy to either field those if she can or pass those along to us. But as we go through this, if you guys have any questions, feel free to send them in the chat or raise your hand and we can get you unmuted. You can ask them out loud. But the first one that I noticed on my screen is this person asked about this year's GIS CAMA evaluation conference. Obviously was canceled this year due to COVID-19. And they're asking about next spring in 2021. And yes, that will be in New Orleans the week of March 17th. So put that on your calendars and check out our website. We'll have a lot of updates on there as these events take form and have some of those details, but that is taking place in New Orleans the week of March 17th next year.
And I would just add, Daniel mentioned that you can go to the site, and we do put up, once we've confirmed a contract with a future meeting, we put it on the website. We have all of our meetings and conferences that are contracted located there, dates and locations. A couple of questions have come up as we've this year converted to an entire conference being virtual, and it has made people concerned or ask questions about future conferences. And I can tell you for certain that our plan is for next year for all of our conferences to return to in person. Obviously, as you guys know, things can change quickly, and we're just evaluating each one as they come up. If the situation doesn't work out where we can meet in person, we would have to rely on virtual, but we do not have plans on making the conference virtual. Going forward, we do love the interaction ourselves and love to get everyone together face to face to meet if it is possible. But it has opened up our eyes to thinking maybe we could do a hybrid conference where everyone can get together, but we might be able to open up the opportunity for some folks to participate that maybe couldn't otherwise, either because of travel costs or if maybe they're in an international location where they can't get to, let's say, Chicago next year. So I just wanted to put that out there. We are planning on hoping, like everyone else, that we can get back to some normalcy next year and have people meet in person. But also in the back of our minds, we know that there's a possibility there could be travel restrictions next year in your particular jurisdiction or nationally. So this is a good exercise for us to go through, and we're hoping that we can get that content out to you guys, whether it's in person or virtual. So.
All right, looks like I have a question here, Joe, and I'll field this one. This question asks, what would be some tips, tricks, and lessons learned from hosting virtual meetings and webinars? I'll speak mostly on my experience from webinars themselves, and as we're diving more into those virtual meetings, those slightly bigger ones, but It's been a really fun experience. I will say, first and foremost, we started this. They existed for a while, but we kind of revamped with working with our marketing director, just changing how we wanted to deliver these. So we host them through WebEx because we can kind of use that registration tool that's built into our website. But that being said, you can use, I know everyone has different tools and access to different programs. WebEx, Zoom, GoToMeetings, all of those work. Those are the three most popular ones, and all of those will work just fine. The biggest tips and tricks I would say is if you're hosting a speaker, so maybe you're the host of the meeting, but you may not be the one presenting, do a walkthrough with them sometime, but obviously probably about a week before. We tend to find that if you do it too early in advance, you kind of lose that awareness and it's not as familiar. So sometime leading up to that, just do a training, hop in the system, basically do simulate a fake meeting, have them pull up their PowerPoint, make sure they're familiar with the chat function. The little things like that seem like they would be really easy can be overwhelming when it's all poured on you at once. So you're like, yeah, I know how chat box works. But then when you're having to focus on a presentation as a presenter, you're thinking about your material, and it's really easy to be like, oh, okay, where'd that chat box go? I closed it by accident. So those little things help make those presentations just a little bit smoother. It makes the experience a lot better for the attendees who are coming. So I would say definitely do a training with them first and foremost. That really, really does help. Think about your presentation themselves, the materials, the PowerPoints you're building, and how just remember that someone's going to be reading that in that format. They're not going to have you necessarily in person to really hit that home. They'll hear you. So you may need to update your slides a little bit in terms of how much wording you have on there, things like that. Just think about the end result first and kind of work backwards from there. So you won't get to walk around and see some faces in the room who may be, looking confused, and you don't get that engagement where you're like, I need to go over that again. Keep it simple and build your presentation around prompting those questions. So, take a little bit of that material off and kind of set them up to get the conversations going. I think those are some pretty big tips. We're diving into hosting more online education. I won't dive too much in that so they can have it for their presentation when they present in a month or two, but that has been a little, that same format, but a lot longer. So we're learning a lot of things from that and the best ways to engage. Think about some of those tools like polling questions, as well as how we did with, Joe just presented here with a couple just engaging, games, some questions you could ask where we can get you guys to interact. We know the fatigue you can have of just staring at a screen all day. Trust me, we get it. We're in the same boat. It's hard sitting at your desk. So think about ways that not only does that help your audience, but it helps you. You don't have to just read off a slide and be like, I hope they got it. So it really does make, it gives it as much of a personal handshake as you can have. But that's a really good question. I like that. All right. I don't see any on my end. Joe, Rachel, or Leanne, do you guys see anything or have any closing remarks?
I would just say keep your eyes open on the virtual conference for this year. We are in the details of getting that planned. And we are going to be having a webinar next month prior to the conference where we'll really go through and talk more in detail about what that conference will be like. I just encourage you to give it a chance. We've lowered the cost so to make it affordable. It's going to be very, very cool. We're going to have some interaction. We're going to have some social events. We're going to have some games. So I want to put my plug in for a virtual annual conference this year. We're hoping to see you there.
Awesome. Yeah, and that webinar will take place August 18th. Registration, it's free, of course, but registration is open on the site. So go ahead and just get registered so you get those reminders. It'll take similar form as you've seen in the past with the Know Before You Go, but we're all learning something a little bit different this year as we'll be hosting it online. But we're hoping to give you guys enough detail so you feel comfortable and not overwhelmed the day of. But we are very, very excited. We've seen a lot of great things behind the scenes that we're excited to debut when conference hits and share those with you. So we really appreciate it. And as I've mentioned early on, this is recorded. This session was as well as the first one. So if you missed the first one, want to hop back, or someone in your office wasn't able to make it, we have that on our YouTube channel. We'll add this to that playlist as well. So when we complete the series, you'll be able to watch them all or revert back to those for any notes you may need. So if you guys have any questions about accessing those, feel free to reach out and we are happy to help. But if there's no more questions, we thank you guys so much for coming, and we will see you again next month. Thanks, guys.